Welcome to the NPD Podcast, a show where we dig into what's actually working or not when it comes to scaling businesses with the people who've been there. Today's guest is currently in the middle of it. So why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, tell everyone what you're doing, where you're at, and where you're going.
My name is Oleg. I'm a CMO slash growth leader slash head of growth and marketing. It depends on who invites me to help them. So for the last 17 years, I'm solely in marketing. And for the last 10 years, the only thing I'm doing is growing businesses and growing startups. I've had pretty much everything. I've seen pretty much everything that you can imagine in terms of growth, startups, failures and wins, and hopefully some of the insights I gained in my latest projects will help some of you skip those problems that we had and grow faster.
Nice. So when going into a business, what are things that you look for where they're struggling or failing that you can help improve on for scalability?
Yeah, sure. So I usually run some kind of, I call it X-ray of the business. For sure, I start with numbers. To be concise, I look in the customer acquisition cost, payback, lifetime value, and so on. The second part, I would look into the customer journey and all the conversion rates on that journey. You know, the framework, AARR framework, Clarity Metrics. So always I would take that framework and see all the metrics within this framework, but in different dimensions, for different segments, for different channels, and so on. So oftentimes founders come and they say like, yes, here are our ARR metrics, but when they are in silos, when they are not segmented and not divided into channels, this information makes almost no sense. So that's another thing that I always do. And I also either talk to real customers or I'm listening to the calls with real customers to, have a deeper dive into their real pain points, into the voice they're using, the language they speak, and so on. And then I ask, so what's already working and can be scaled, if any? And in most cases, there is nothing that can be really scaled with profitable unit economics. So the second question would be, what's blocking our growth and what holds us back? And from those questions, we build a quite simple 3-month plan to double down on what works, if there is any, and plan with hypothesis to fix the biggest blockers of our growth.
Interesting. So, I mean, it makes sense, right? You segment out the different channels that you're marketing within. You look at, so one of the things that I was thinking is like, what conversion points are you looking at? Because you said you look at all the conversion points. So you're looking at things such as, for instance, real rough, like say you have a demo on the site that you're trying to get people to sign up for. Are you looking for people who not just click on demo, click on contact form, anything else within their journey that you're looking at as a critical point to see an area of opportunity?
Yeah, sure. It really depends on the type of business. For example, in B2C health and wellness apps, you don't have demos. You have a absolutely different funnel. But that's really super important question, and most founders overlook it. When I am doing this X-ray of AARR metrics, I'm asking for the metrics they have. They provide the conversion rates and all costs of different stages and so on. But then, and that's the biggest and the most important part, you have to find the best industry benchmarks for the same niche, for the same funnel, and so on. And that's what founders overlook all the time. Or they're looking at some generic benchmarks like we have to have acquisition cost of blah, blah, blah. But,
or they make it up.
But honestly, I spend a lot of time finding the correct benchmarks, not just some industry reports, but the right one. What the conversion should be from, I don't know, quiz visitor to paywall visitor to conversion to payment, to checkout and everything. Not just like what are the benchmarks out there, but for specific industry, niche, and so on. And when we do this exercise, we oftentimes see that our funnel is not the best funnel we need. That's a lot of gold we find there.
Yeah. So, that leads into, how do you find these benchmarks? How do you find where you can get the exact measurement points that you're able to go against?
Sure, there are two main sources.
Yeah.
First of all, looking for the open sources, like you can use ChatGPT, the latest model, thinking model, which will try to find. You cannot rely and ask ChatGPT to tell you benchmarks. It will be not correct in most of the time, but you're asking for links to specific sources to prove that. And then you go click on those links and you are reading and you're checking if it's worth it or not. And you can look into the reports of like Revenue Cat or some other big, sources of information who share industry benchmarks. But even there, we see so many. I've seen so many times that the benchmarks are not correct. We know it is not correct, but for some reason they are making some aggregation of different data. And aggregated data looks like this, but in reality, you have a little bit different situation. So the best way is the second one, when you have to find people who are working in the companies who made it on LinkedIn or using your network, and you hop on a call with them. And if you have enough of personal branding, then it's easy for you. And you are just straightforward asking them of the benchmarks. And I should say in 80% of the cases, they will share those benchmarks with you. Maybe not 100% precise, but more or less you will understand. Yeah, okay. That's kind of two main sources I use for the real industry benchmarks.
Got it. You're digging deep, doing the detective work, and you're reaching out to others to see if you can essentially have a conversation with them and share data points. So, right, both people could be like, oh, okay, you're there, we're here. Maybe we need to change, because it's easy to re-engineer their funnels. And if theirs is working better, all right, well, let's check this one out. Cool. So then you identify these benchmarks, then you take action. What action do you kind of generally take going down that path? So now that you have it, then is it about additional research to identify how to develop, say, the funnel, and then its execution?
Yeah, again, in most cases, like ideally, you just find what's working. For example, you see that the funnel itself is not working, or the ARR metrics are not scalable. But then within those metrics, when you make segmentation, you find that, okay, there is one ICP, there is one segment profile, customer profile in one country, one niche that is actually working great. That for this specific audience, your funnel is performing well enough that it can be scaled. So then you double down on this specific segment, and you are trying to scale it with the channels and the funnels and the messaging which you already have, right? If it's not working and you have the right benchmarks, then you have to launch the growth engine, which consists of creating hypotheses, formulating hypotheses, and then testing those hypotheses. So you see the benchmark, you know where you not performing not so good, and you formulate hypothesis how this can be solved.
Interesting. So that would go into the second part of kind of what I was thinking is like, so one, you're able to identify areas of opportunity to scale. You broke it down, you segment it. Now it's okay. It's not working. We don't necessarily know why. So let's create some ideas of how we can then A/B test, multivariate test, different avenues that we can get it to work. And then, so with your testing, what do you have kind of a general standard for how long you run that test to see success? Or are these quick tests that you're doing? I'm sure it's a combination of both, but like.
Yeah, I'd say the better situation you have, the quicker tests you can run, and the smaller swings you can make. But in most cases, again, the situation is so bad in reality that you cannot just run A/B test of green and red button of your landing page. Instead, you have to choose always the most impactful hypothesis with the biggest swings possible. And that's where I see the most of leverage. So if you assume that you can improve some conversions by 15%, which sounds like cool, in most cases, it will make no sense for you to really spend your time on this hypothesis, on this experiment. In most cases, your, let's say, blended acquisition cost kind of okay, but it's not scalable, and your paid channel acquisition cost like 5 times far from what you need. 15% improvement will not make it or break it. So you may test absolutely different type of funnel, different type of positioning, like completely different, to some extent different, absolutely different pricing, and so on. And like from one-time payment to subscription, that's kind of already a good, more or less good swing. Going from landing page and demo to quiz funnel, that's also kind of a big swing experiment. But changes to screen in a funnel is not what you should be focusing on. So the bigger swings, the better in the beginning. That's number one. Second, clarity on your positioning for each experiment, or you're making an experiment with a specific ICP in mind. And the third, I'd say, answering your question about the amount of traffic we need, or like how fast we can run the experiment. In best case scenario, you will have some analyst who can help you calculate the amount of traffic you need for that experiment. If you don't, it's quite easy. There are a lot of online calculators, or you can just use Google Sheet. Like sometimes you need 500 registrations, to make a meaningful understanding of the results of a hypothesis. But the biggest thing here is I've seen a lot of experiments being stopped without reliable results. Sometimes like it makes sense, but oftentimes when I said to founder, please, let's run it for one more week until we hit the target of registrations or some conversions, number of conversions which we wanted to have. And then we see that the situation changed completely. Like for 1 week, this experiment was performing so bad that we thought like it should be stopped. But the next week, everything changed completely. And
I see that with paid ads a lot, right? Because you have the Google's multivariate testing going on in the background, and it's almost like it goes through all the bad first, and then you're like, I don't know if it's going to work, and then the second to third week, it's like, oh, what happened? So with that though, what interesting? What do you look for as far as do you have a calculation that you use to find what will get you the number of results that you're looking for?
When time goes by and you are in the same niche, for example, you're getting to know.
Yeah, because it becomes more intuitive,
with your gut feeling. Sometimes you need 50 to make 50 sales, and you kind of already understand. Sometimes you need 100 sales, and then you understand that it worked or not. What I would say, never in the early stage of startup, never judge experiment results based on proxy metrics like cost of lead, conversion rates on somewhere, and so on. Always try to judge your experiment based on the acquisition cost, at least. I mean, customer acquisition cost, the paying customer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I see as well too, people want to be like, well, that costs too much. And you're like, well, what's your lifetime value? Well, our lifetime value is 10x that. And you're like, well, no, it doesn't cost too much. You need to get them in the door, and now you have the revenue being generated. So that's a good point. Yeah, a lot of people don't always think about lifetime value when factoring in what their cost acquisition is. They'll just think it's a loss because the first month subscription fee may be less than what they paid to acquire the customer.
Yeah, or CTR or CPM of some Facebook ads. It makes no sense. Our best performing campaign ever was so expensive in terms of CPM, honestly.
The soft metrics were bad, yeah.
Yeah, it was huge, but it was the specific audience who actually purchased.
Yeah. And I've come to find that a lot of times you're going to pay more for the soft metrics, because when you talk to some business owners, I find, who've been doing it for 10 years, they're like, well, what's a CPC? And like, well, that CPC is way too high. And you're like, it doesn't matter what the CPC is, because the user you're going after has greater competition. So you're going to pay more to get them to the page. And then you look at your cost of acquisition. Your cost of acquisition's, a third down from where it was when CPCs were even lower. So why are you focused on these vanity metrics, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. So now where you're at, how are you guys generating more leads for what you're currently working on? Because I know you've had a lot of success recently.
Yeah. Again, when I started with this company, we spent a lot of time researching market, competition on this market, different funnels companies are using, pricing strategies companies are using, and so on. So finding the best lead generation strategy was mostly based on the competition of our and adjacent niches. All right.
Interesting.
And when you dive so deep into your niche and into the best products in your niche or very similar niches, then this question of how to generate leads disappears itself. And you see that 99.9% of really successful companies who the benchmarks, whose benchmarks are really great for, and you want to have similar, they already refined, most probably, your lead generation, the funnels, to the extent that you should not, in the beginning, try to reinvent the wheel.
Right. Yeah, you're re-engineering.
Yeah.
Right.
It sounds not so fancy, but that's how you can earn money.
I agree. Yeah, the blueprint's out there. It's just let's get it. Let's dissect this. And it's funny because it happens a lot with in search and digital. Is like you have people already in the top positions, and then so we'll use these grader tools that look at the top 3 to 5 people there, and it's like, well, here's our answers. Like it's telling us what we need to do to start, at least, to generate the content and everything else.
Yeah, but there's a big trap there. The big trap is that when you're researching this niche and competitors and trying to find those benchmarks, oftentimes you find the wrong companies or wrong benchmarks. Like you can find a company which is running paid ads, for example, but they're generating 90% of their revenue from podcasts, which is completely different thing than running paid ads. And you think like, okay, but you may not notice it, and then you are trying to reverse engineer what they've done, but you forget that you don't know that 90% of their customers are coming from podcasts, and you assume that 90% of customers are coming from paid ads, and that's where you screw up.
That's a good point, because that goes into competitor analysis and doing a complete competitor analysis to understand what all marketing channels and points are and who those players are, because sometimes you could have an influencer within there that kind of skews the data on you. And you're saying, they have podcasts, they have a good following. Now you look at the ads and they got enough people where they're retargeting and running a little bit of cold traffic, and it's misleading, like you're saying.
Absolutely.
So if someone was trying to scale right now, what's one piece of advice you wish you had earlier?
Okay, that's a good question. So if it's really about scaling, you should already have fixed your retention. So if oftentimes founders come and they say, we need to scale. Can you help us with the advice? And I'm like asking a silly question. And it turns out that they are not ready for scaling at all. It's not about scaling. It's to find some initial product, channel, market fit. It's far away from really scaling, So for the initial phase of scaling, you need to you don't need really good retention. You don't even need a product, honestly, to make those tests of your positioning, of your messaging and pricing, and to understand the acquisition cost and so on. But when you're really scaling, before that, you need to have a good retention, which will allow you to purchase enough to pour enough money into the marketing channels and be profitable with that.
Right. Yeah. So you go into a company and they're like, yeah, we don't have any, we don't remarket to our current customer base to help with 1, retention, and 2, upsell. Which happens a lot.
Absolutely. Another thing is that when I joined Aspect, they had few ICPs or very broad niche, and what we did is we focused on one specific clear ICP, ideal customer profile. We narrowed down, and that gave us huge leverage, huge trust, and reduced our acquisition cost enormously. Retention grew up as well. So narrowing down to specific ICP would be the second thing before scaling.
Makes sense.
And also, it's nice to have, or at least start working with some extra channel, which is not paid, like SEO. With SEO, for example, we started working with SEO in November, and 8 months, we had almost zero organic Google search traffic. In 8 or 9 months, we already reached the amount of high quality, I'd say, traffic, which was half of the biggest competitor in US.
Wow. That's awesome.
And that reduced acquisition cost, blended CAC for us a lot.
Awesome. And where can people connect with you or learn more about what you're doing?
On LinkedIn, I don't know if I can share my contacts somewhere.
Yeah, I'll put it in the description. Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, Jason, for having me. It was really nice talking to you.
Yeah, awesome.